Je suis Étienne de Lessard. Né en Normandie, j'ai fait la grande traversée pour venir en Nouvelle-France en 1646, à l'âge de 22 ans. Olivier le Tardif, alors procureur de la compagnie de Beaupré, me concéda en 1651 une superbe terre, ici même, à Sainte-Anne-du-Petit-Cap, que vous appelez aujourd'hui Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupre. Le geste dont je suis si fier est sans aucun doute ma décision du 8 mars 1658. Donner une partie de ma terre pour qu'une petite église y soit construite au cours de l'année. Vous savez, il y avait à ce moment-là une vingtaine de familles à Sainte-Anne-du-Petit-Cap. Et je n'étais pas du tout insensible au fait que ces habitants désiraient avoir une église pour y célébrer leur foi et y recevoir les sacrements. En compagnie de M. de Quélus, un sulpicien, grand vicaire de l'évêque de Rouen, je suis allé sur cette terre pour choisir le meilleur endroit pour la construction de la petite église. C'est lui qui a décidé que cette première église serait dédiée à la bonne Sainte-Anne. Vraiment, je n'aurais jamais cru que Dieu se servirait de mon petit don, 2 arpents de terre, pour accomplir autant de merveilles par l'intercession de la bonne Sainte-Anne.
Welcome to the Basilica of Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupre. We stand here on the front steps before the main door of this beautiful neo-Roman style church built in the shape of a cross. From ground level to the end of the steeples, at the very tip of the crosses, the church is 300 feet high, approximately 100 meters. At the crossing of the transepts, the edifice is 200 feet wide, around 60 meters, and the facade is 160 feet wide, 50 meters. Lengthwise, the basilica is 325 feet long, more than 100 meters. On the main copper doors, beautiful artwork depicts scenes from the Gospels. They are bridged over by a magnificent tympanum, reflecting the glory of Saint Anne, who is surrounded by crowds of pilgrims affectionately pressing the one they call Good Saint Anne. Slightly above the tympanum, the pilgrim angel watches over the thousands of faithful who visit the shrine every year. Atop the angel, the 12 apostles flank the great rose window. On the pinnacle, between the 2 steeples, the beautiful statue of Saint Anne, found intact after the major fire that destroyed the previous basilica in 1922. Finally, many statues also embellish the facade. Mary, Joseph, Joachim, John the Baptist, Bishop Montmorency de Laval, and Marie de l'Incarnation are some of the masterpieces accomplished by sculptor Émile Brunet from Quebec. As we enter the basilica, we walk on holy ground. All who enter here experience an atmosphere of peace. This is the house of the Lord. Let's discover this holy place, which opens itself up to us like a great history book. This history is sacred. This history is our own. We are in the vestibule. Here all the decoration was conceived so as to reflect unity, like an evocation of the world where human beings live, a representation of the divine activity in time, prolonged by human industry. At first glance, we meet with God the Father, the Creator. Then we discover the solar system and all the world, represented by animals, plants, and fruits. Then time appears, the hours, the days, the seasons and months evoked by the signs of the zodiac. The chapel situated in the north extremity evokes birth. A round of newborns express the enjoyment of the new life, sprung with the baptismal waters. As we continue on the floor, the work of mankind is represented through the arts, the professions, and scientific activities. And we end up in the Chapel of the Calvary, located in the south extremity, which reminds us that death was conquered by the Lord and thus became our entrance to everlasting life. Finally, in the center of all this representation, it is through dance that we express the joy of living and the happiness of entering into God's house. The Basilica is a sanctuary dedicated to Sainte Anne, and that's why the first images that draw our attention refer to good Sainte Anne. Even if we know little about Sainte Anne, the fact that she's the mother of Mary and the grandmother of Jesus is sufficient for the Church to acknowledge and worship her since time age old. The entire vault of the Basilica is dedicated to her. It relates her life story, the life of a holy Jewish woman in her time. It indicates her virtues, which incidentally should also be ours. It reveals her glorification. In the heart of the apse, just above the high altar, we see Sainte Anne, the Virgin Mary, and the child Jesus. Sainte Anne offers a fruit to Jesus. It's not simply the grandmother's little treat to her grandson. It's a magnificent symbol of his mission as the Redeemer and Rescuer of mankind. It's not a fruit of death as the fruit that Adam and Eve ate, but a fruit of life, atonement for the original sin. In this heavenly representation, these three characters are surrounded by several blessed of our Church, alongside with Saint Joseph, Saint Joachim, and Saint John the Baptist. In the background, a full orchestra of elegant angel musicians. Glorified in heaven, Sainte Anne is prayed to on earth and in this sanctuary. All the miseries of this world convene and kneel before her statue. Like a visit to a dear grandmother, all who come here feel unconditionally welcomed. The chapel behind the statue is also dedicated to her. This is where a holy relic of Sainte Anne is exposed and was given to the sanctuary by Pope John XXIII. The great mosaic of this chapel evokes her role as defender of the poor, the humble, and all those who suffer. Finally, the two important stained glass windows of the transepts, the arms of the cross, are also dedicated to Sainte Anne, recalling two great sanctuaries, that of Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupre in Brittany and Sainte Anne of Jerusalem. The most important role of Sainte Anne is to guide us towards her grandson Jesus. The Basilica is above all a place of celebration, especially of the Eucharist, the meeting par excellence with Jesus. The first character who draws our attention is Christ. Draped with his red garment, he is shown in the window above the high altar. He is surrounded with the prophets and the patriarchs of the Old Testament who predicted and proclaimed his coming. And on the four central pillars of the Basilica, the authors of the four Gospels: Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, who put down in writing their experience, which we continue to read, and which makes Jesus become so alive and close to us. The capitals, which crown the columns, express the essence of the Gospels and are considered outstanding artwork. The life of the Christ, since his birth up to his death and his resurrection. These sculptures, created by Émile Brunet, are considered as masterpieces and could indeed be the most beautiful capitals of the world. Even the floor has something to say. Let's start off with the mat of the concupiscences. The power, the wealth, and the pleasures. In itself, they're not bad things. They're even necessary, but in moderation. And in the central path, 7 medallions recall the capital sins. They remind us that we're limited. We come to meet the Lord, but we realize that we often turn away from him. Built before the Vatican II Council, the radiant chapels surrounding the ambulatory would give many priests the possibility to celebrate Mass alone at the same time. Forming a crown around the choir, a great mosaic mural illustrating the history of the Eucharist connects all these small chapels. Each one is dedicated to an illustrious saint of the Catholic Church. Saint Alphonsus, founder of the Congregation of the Redemptorists. Our Lady of Perpetual Help, the worship of which is entrusted to the Redemptorists. Saint Patrick, a tribute from our numerous pilgrims of Irish origin. Saint Joseph, son-in-law of Sainte Anne. Saint Benedict, a spiritual master, founder of the Benedictines order, and at the origin of all who consecrate their lives to Christ. Saint John Baptist de La Salle, the teacher. Saint Joachim, the husband of Sainte Anne. Saint John the Baptist, patron of the French Canadians. The Eucharistic Heart, Chapel of the Holy Reserve. Saint Gerard Magella, a Redemptorist brother and a remarkable saint. And finally, the Holy Family Chapel. We are now on the lower level of the Basilica, in the beautiful chapel dedicated to the Immaculate Conception. The chapel was built to honor Mary, the daughter of Saint Anne, which is another way to glorify the grandmother of Jesus. Of typical Romantic architecture, the chapel is decorated with paintings done by the artists Frédéric Doyon and Marius Dubois. On the capitals of the small columns, notice the small mosaics representing birds, flowers, butterflies, and many other little things, yet so attractive. Once again, they represent God's nature, the creation of our very generous Lord, who reveals us His infinite love through all these beauties. One of the most beautiful replica of Michelangelo's Pieta in Rome is located here. And it's more than a masterpiece. Many pilgrims come here to pray and find courage, strength, and hope. On the other side, the grave of the Venerable Father Pampalon, a young Redemptorist from Quebec who died here in Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupre in order of sanctity at the age of 29. He possesses a special gift to help all those who suffer from dependence in drugs, alcohol, or any other substances. This basilica is the expression of the faith of our people, its affection for the Mother of Mary, whom we affectionately call Good Saint Anne. It's a place of prayer, of light, of hope, a place of feast and reconciliation. Sainte-Anne-de-Beaupre, 350 years of history and of miracles. Let's make ours the prayer which John Paul II sent to Saint Anne on September 10, 1984. Good Saint Anne, I came to honor you and to call upon you with all these pilgrims in your sanctuary of Beaupre. Since the very beginning of the Church of Canada, so many people felt the effects of your power and your kindness. Spread your benevolence on the Church of our time. Help her to renew her heart, to fulfill the mission which Christ entrusted to her, that the redemption becomes more and more plentiful in this world in dire need of light, of peace, and of justice.